The shuffled gait, the helicopter walk, is one of the few unstaged moments of this administration, almost a metaphor of the administration itself. Unsteady, at risk of falling, may be a sign of something more serious. If you Google elderly and shuffle, a first entry reads, quote, "If your older adult has started shuffling their feet when walking, it's important to schedule an appointment with their doctor to find out what's causing it." Amid policy stumbles and plummeting poll numbers, there is a growing sense this administration is without a policy doctor. From Afghanistan to the southern border, from rising inflation to supply chain problems, solutions seem to elude the president and those around him. As when John Kerry had to explain to French reporters that his president was unaware of a NATO submarine deal that so soured Franco-U.S. relations, France recalled its U.S. ambassador.
He had not been aware of that. He literally had not been aware of what had transpired. And I don't want to go into the details of it, but suffice it to say that the president, my president, is very committed to strengthening the relationship.
The administration, staffed in its upper echelons with far-left Obama loyalists, appears determined to impose its vision of cradle-to-grave entitlements at any cost, and often at the expense of other pressing issues.
I'm supremely confident that everything's going to work out perfectly in terms.
Lost on the president is that in the process, he may be losing the American public. COVID's refusal to be conquered remains Biden's biggest problem. Politico reports that in a focus group of 40 gettable Democrats and independents in Clark County, Nevada, researchers found that voters were, quote, anxious, tired, and exhausted, and that they looked at the government's COVID stumbles along the way and shrugged their collective shoulders. A researcher described the focus group voters as, quote, flat on their backs. The administration's push for 100% vaccination remains its first priority. But that mandate has run head-on into stiff resistance. Healthcare workers, first responders, now air traffic controllers, and even some pilots are staging or are considering protests and sick-outs.
The transportation sector is the heart and soul of this country, and it's a very delicate system. If there's a disruption in one part of the system, it has a catastrophic effect among the rest of the system, which is going to affect commerce, it's going to affect trade, and ultimately it's going to affect the economy. If you have flights reduced by 30% because 30% of pilots are fired because they won't take the vaccine, this is going to affect how your goods get here from overseas, how they're distributed to the stores. You know, the same thing's happening with the truckers. It's happening in the shipping industry.
Some wonder whether the military will be next. Stubborn statistics suggest that the administration's vaccine requirements are hardly a panacea. A compilation of 29 studies of thousands of people who've already had COVID, quote, demonstrates what was and is already known. Natural immunity for a SARS-type virus is robust, long-lasting, and broadly effective, even in the case of mutations, generally more so than vaccines. Of that study, Senator Rand Paul tweets to 25,000 likes, quote, "Will Fauci now finally apologize to the 100 million or more Americans who've had COVID?" That, while mask mandates for children who face a greater risk from seasonal flu than from COVID continue to roil school districts and divide parents. That conflict ranks second to another administration-caused school controversy, Attorney General Merrick Garland's memo that requires the FBI to monitor parents for threatening behavior towards school boards and staffers amidst raucous debates over critical race theory and gender fluidity curricula.
The Department of Justice gets what it focuses on, and right now, very clearly, the Biden Department of Justice and law enforcement think that American parents are terrorists.
Garland's memo was issued without the Attorney General disclosing that his own son-in-law, Alexander Tanner, heads Panorama Education, a company specializing in curricula provided to thousands of U.S. schools that focuses on, quote, systemic racism, oppression, white supremacy, implicit bias, and intersectionality. Even the administration's attempts at feel-good media staging have been backfiring. It turns out that the school children chatting with Vice President Harris in celebration of NASA Day were not picked for their interest in space exploration. They were child actors. Quote, "I had to send in a monologue to get the part," one of them told the Daily Mail. That is telling. A government that chooses actors over real people or even over real children may be afraid of what real people think and say, a kind of Potemkin Village theater. Potemkin Village, defined by Wiki as, quote, any construction, literal or figurative, whose sole purpose is to provide an external facade to a country that is faring poorly. Doug Mckelway for the Washington Examiner.